The Warnborough Club.
Speaking to Dr. Amr Wakeb, Amr graduated in 2021 with a PhD in Business Transformation and Strategy Alignment. So firstly, what initially attracted you to study with Warnborough?
Actually, the relationship started back in 2003 when I did my Master of Science in IT. At the time, I was working with Total Oil and Gas, and I was actually looking for, a school where I can be able to do my remote study. And hence, after a lot of research, was a very limited option back then. I'm talking nearly 20 years back. At the time, was actually Warnborough was one of the few who actually had this capability to support that kind of initiatives to advance with that. The second advantage was the company, Total at the time, were kind of mandating to do a research base, not a traditional classes concept. Hence, I had two obstacles. One has to be remote, second has to be a research base, and kind of relevant to the domain, which is back then I was doing pure IT and technology related. And then at the time, Warnborough was actually offering that two parts of the component. Hence, finish with that. That was a good success. A couple of years later, finish. And nearly about 18 years later, when I considered, okay, came back to Australia 2007, continued with the industry, started my own company back in 2013, focusing on digital transformation and so on. And then I thought, okay, I need to actually drill down and do a research based on that domain. I start actually doing an innovation pattern in that space. I have 4 innovation patterns in digital business transformation. I developed a number of solutions, and I want to kind of wrap it up with more of have more of a research base and wrap it with more framework and methodology under kind of my name in a way. And then I reached out to Warnborough at the time, because first I was in Australia at the time. So, okay, I was looking for similar capability. While I'm working, I can be able to fit with my time schedule and running a business as well. And hence that was, it's just a continuity from where I started back in 2003. And during this time, Dr. Julian himself, he kind of, worked closely because it was a domain that interests everybody. It's a global challenge about digital business transformation. And it was a really good collaboration over these couple of years, which is definitely was a good blend between the innovation pattern I built and the research base combined together, and be able to come up with this massive research.
Perfect. Yeah, I've heard that from quite a lot of students, especially recent graduates, that Warnborough was kind of one of the only places that offered the specific course they were looking for and the flexibility and being able to do it online. So yeah, that's great. Thank you. So next, could you tell us a bit about your overall learning experience whilst writing your PhD?
It was actually a lot of interactive, because the challenge, converting a pure technology and innovation and methodology and frameworks into a research-based and academic had a lot of obstacles. And hence it was a lot of interaction and back and forth. And we strike during the process also with the whole COVID, and even make it much even harder for any kind of, reaching out physically. So that kind of, but anyhow, the advantage was all along, it's actually the ability to remote and collaborate. And we had a lot of extensive Zoom session and working in that research in a very interactive way. And definitely, like I said, because it's a topic of an interest from actually Dr. Julian himself, he was the mentor in this research. It was a lot of diving into a lot of details and real business challenge across sectors and industry in our research to dive into furthermore. And definitely was an eye-opener when you kind of trying to blend capability from an innovation and research into research and rapid with an academic flavor. Definitely was kind of it boost and push the limit a little bit, but I'm very happy with the result at the end.
Yeah, and of course, as you say, you studied whilst COVID was happening, which probably had a lot more challenges than you would have thought, but you've done it.
Yes, absolutely. Because with research, you have to prove things, especially in the PhD space, with a live scenario, with live case, with a real client. Okay, so at the time, most clients you cannot really go and talk to them physically easily, and most of them were working from home. And so, in order to explain to them, okay, I'm doing a research, I need some support. We're trying to do this prototype or pilot in your organization. Would you have the appetite? We tried. So it's definitely this added an additional challenge. But the advantage is because I was blending some of the platforms and the technology was built prior, which was all like a SaaS, which is meaning you can access from anywhere. It made it a little bit easier for the client to kind of give us a chance to be able to implement some of this prototype and research to apply remotely. And yeah, and that's really a pure demonstration about when we're talking about remote capability end to end. This is the perfect scenario. You got a remote capability of platform with a remote research with interaction with academic and the client fully in a way that wouldn't be possible. And many universities were struggling because they never actually prep enough early, because what happened was COVID really exposed the weakness of the readiness of many organizations and university about their ability to offer really true remote capability. With Warnborough, because they started back in 2003, so they were like 18 years ahead of everybody else. So they had everything well defined remotely. So when the time come, it was business as usual for them. For most other universities, it was like, a panic, because they were not really quite, they claim they are remote, but not quite remote.
And in what ways do you think Warnborough has aided your career progression and overall success?
When you're trying to push it with research, so meaning you kind of really trying to apply many of the theory and methodology and frameworks you kind of define, and trying to kind of go into client and trying to bridge this gap between the theory and the actual pilot and prototype on the ground. But definitely along the way, when you actually, your goal is, okay, you want to get your research, approved and completed, and definitely that credited of to being, have a PhD for this domain, it kind of definitely helped from as running a business and still offering consultancy service as well as part of the service modeling from my company. It adds some value add, definitely having the credential with your PhD plus with your old innovation pattern combined together. It made the profile a lot more stronger because you get both the academic research behind plus the technology and the innovation pattern combined together.
Perfect. And could you tell us a bit about your business and sort of what impact you've made in your industry?
Yeah, so Lead Vision, which is my company, was started back in 2013. We develop our own product and capability, which is focused on digital business transformation to enable mid-sized business really to transform from end to end, automating all the process of operation and fully digitalized. So definitely it's an incremental development within the industry itself, because with the whole industry 4.0 and artificial intelligence followed by then, and etc. and machine learning, it kind of start raising the boundary and make it much more challenge in order to kind of, it's not about digitalization in the traditional form back in 2016 and 15. So from 2018, 19, the appetite and the business maturity increase a lot. So the expectation become a lot higher of what can be done. Having 5G involved in the process and the remote mobility, etc., and the Internet of Things, it even raises about even higher and higher. So the client tolerance become lower, expectation higher, meaning they want to achieve so much very quickly in a very innovative way. So hence, we touch on some of this area in the research in terms of how we can actually bridge that combination with the change impact on organization, part of the organization change management, in terms of how we have this agile capability to achieve and mature at the same time and eliminate some of the resistance within the change within the organization. So combine this together, it was really a nice mixture to allow us to evolve. And I'm applying actually some of this right now as we speak to one of my government clients here in Western Australia.
So actually you've done your PhD at the perfect time, really, in terms of the progression of the industry at the moment. That's great.
Exactly, yeah.
So what would you say is the top highlight of your time studying at Warnborough? As you say, you've been a student for quite a while now. So what would you say your main highlight has been?
You see, that one of the big advantage, and that is, as I said, back in 2003 till now, it's easy to approach. They're very responsive. Okay, and that is for me is very critical, especially with the remote learning. There is a reason behind that. Usually, because you're working full time, you've got some other commitment, you're trying to advance with your education and stuff like that. So the last thing you want to be sending an email, nobody responds to you, or administration is not being active enough, or your mentor is not really being as proactive to review your material. That's one of the advantage. They kind of take it to another level when it comes to collaboration and responsive with the student and in the entry and every stage, and with the mentor take over and continue with your support. It definitely they really was quite pioneer in that since back in 2003, and over the years they evolved more. And the beauty is they actually start adopting themselves a lot of the remote learning with Google and others integration with the classroom and stuff like that, which was kind of impressive. So it made the actual experience all in all effortless. No headache, no drama with the whole kind of administration, follow-up, mentoring, reviewing, etc., conferencing through Zoom and so on. So it was kind of easy experience to go through with the workload I had to go through with my normal running business, etc., etc. When it comes to the administration concept part of it and the responsive and trying to validate a few things or review or get hold of your mentor, they're right there. They're very interactive. And because the whole remote learning was quite embedded as part of the DNA of the school back in many, many years ago. So in 2003, before if you even know what remote learning is, they were already started. So they had a quite mature process back then, and it continued to evolve over the years. Hence, it was relatively easy enough to transition over the years, even with the whole restriction and COVID, etc. It was effortless. Hence, it make it kind of easy. That's why I went back. Even I moved countries and I travel, etc., and I still reach back to them 18 years later to do my PhD.
Well, that's so good to hear. So yeah, that's great. That's really good advice. Thank you very much.
The Warnborough Echo.